In this presentation, we will put together financial statements for the month end as of the second month of operations within our practice problem. So we've entered data for 2 months of operations, now running reports as of the end of the second month, including the comparative balance sheet and comparative income statement, comparing and contrasting the first and the second month. We will also be running a transaction detail report, which is a great report to review work. It's also a great report to see how much data has been input, which could be useful for a billing process as well. We will do this within QuickBooks Pro 2020, QuickBooks Desktop 2020. Here we are in our Get Great Guitars file. We currently have the open windows open. You can open the open windows by going to the View dropdown and selecting the Open Windows list. We're going to be making the month-end financial statements, which would typically include the balance sheet and the income statement. But now, since we have 2 months of operations, we're going to do some comparative balance sheets and income statements, and we'll be taking a look at the transaction detail report. We'll also be printing these out and thinking about how we might want to format them and save them, exporting them to Excel, making PDF files with them. So we're going to go to the reports dropdown. We're going to start off with a comprehensive balance sheet or a comparative balance sheet, and we start off to create that by going to the company and financial. We're going to scroll down to the balance sheet reports. We're going to go to the company and financial balance sheet standard report, and then we're going to change the dates first right here. We're going to say this is going to be 02/28/20. And actually, there's going to be 29 days in February 2020, so let's make it 02/29/20. And so this is going to be our report then. This will be the standard report. You may want to include this report in a packaging of reports if you were going to present this to a client. Or you may want to just include a comparative report. We're going to be making a comparative report. We have 2 months of data. We're going to be including a comparative report. To do that, we're going to go to the Customize up top. Now, the comparative report's a little bit confusing. There's a couple different ways we can do it. We're going to do it by using the previous column down here. We're going to select the previous, and then to do that, you got to make sure that you are in the current month. Now, I like to put the full month here, so that I like to say, well, let's put the beginning of the month, 02/01/20. So that's February 1st through February 29th, the full month. And then I want you to show the previous month as well. So let's do that first. We're going to say OK. And there we have it. So now we have February, the current month first, which is kind of standard. We want the current month first, then the prior month. Now, as we do this, we might want to see the change and the percentage change. So we may as well basically include that since we have these 2 months here. So let's do that. We're going to go to the Customize report up top. We're going to say, let's look at the change, and then let's look at the percentage change. And if we go OK, now we've got the current month, the prior month, the difference, subtracting those two out, the percentage change. And you'll recall that the current, if we calculated this, 99,333.93 minus 94,436.17, there's the change. Taking that change divided by the previous month, which is January, 94,436.17. That's how we're getting, if we move the decimal 2 points over, 5-point rounded, 5.2. So that's going to be what we have here. So those are going to be those adjustments. Let's do a little bit more modification before we save it. So for example, we might want to remove these items up top. So we'll go to the Customize Reports. We'll go to the headers and footers. We're going to remove the date, the time, and the report basis. So these items should not then show up top. We might want to change the name then as well, because we've now altered it to something like a comparative balance sheet. So we'll call it a comparative balance sheet. That'll change the title of it. Let's see what that looks like. We're going to say OK. So now we have a comparative balance sheet. And so there's that, and we've removed these items to the upper left. We also might want to change this as of February, right? That's okay. It's the end of the second month. Let's put January and February. So let's go Customize Report, and let's go Headers and Footers, and that's going to be in the subheader. So let's just report it as January and February. And so if we save that, then we got January and February. Let's just say 2020. Let's go back in there and go to header and footer and take out the 29/2020. So January and February 2020. Now I'm going to determine where I want to save this information. I'm going to put it into this folder. I'm going to call it section 8. So I'm going to say this is going to be a new folder. Let's put it into section 8. And then within section 8, I'm going to double click on the section 8. And then I'm going to call it, let's make a new folder, financial statements for, let's say, February. And so that's where I'm going to put this information. Now I'm going to export it to Excel so that we can all group it in one PDF file as we've seen in the past. And then we'll also print them as PDFs as well. So I'm going to go to Excel up top. I'm going to go to create a new worksheet. It's also going to go into a new workbook. So we're going to go ahead and say export. Here is our report. Now, typically I'll go in here and I delete this. I'm going to right click and delete it. It'll bounce back once we export another to the sheet, but I'm going to delete it for now. I'm going to go to the second tab down below, if I can see it down here. And we're going to go to the page layout, which is this little icon. And it'll say OK, and that'll show us that there's these split screens. That can be found up in the View tab. You go into the Windows group and the Split, and that'll remove the split screens there. If we go back, and then I would rename the tab, which we might call Comparative Balance Sheet, and say OK, and then go back to our front sheet. Now I'm going to save this by going to the File drop-down. We're going to save as, browse, and then it's going to be going to our desktop is where I have it. So it's in the desktop, which is kind of a messy location. And we want the Get Great Guitars, section 8, and the financial statements for February. And then again, I'll put that here, financial statements for February. You might want to make this title a little, a little more clean because it's the one that's going to be given to the client. So I'm going to say yes, and then I'm going to close this back out. And then I'll also make a PDF of this by going to the print up top. You could save it as a PDF. I'm going to use the Qt PDF printer just as a practice because I think it's good practice. It's going to the Qt PDF printer. We're going to go ahead and print that. And here's going to be the printing screen. I'm going to put it into the Get Great Guitars for section 8. And I'm going to just put this outside here. And I'm going to call it the full name, Comparative Balance Sheet. And we could say February and save that. And now we'll go to the next report, which will of course be the profit and loss. So we're going to start off with the reports up top, company and financial. We're going to go to the profit and loss standard report. And then we can change the dates from 01/01/20 to, let's say, 02/29/20, 02/29/20. Here is our standard balance sheet. We could use this and print this out. I'm going to make some adjustments. We're going to do the comparative balance sheet here as well, compared January to February. So we're going to go to the customized reports up top. And once again, we want to use the previous period, which means I need to change the dates up here not to include January, but just February. So I'm going to change this from 02/01/20. And then we'll choose the previous period. And then if we say OK, then we'll have the February 1st and then January. Then I'm going to go back up and add the changes as well. So we'll go to Customize Report. We'll then go down to the dollar change and the percentage change. Do this again, say OK. Then we have the dollar change and the percentage change. Same kind of concept. If we were to pull, let's say, the totals down here, and if we took the 15800 minus the 2974.4, we get the change, the 12,824.60. If we take that divided by the previous period, which is the 2975.4, we then get the 4, if we move it over, 431%. So, and that's because obviously a lot more revenue in year 2 than year 1, but we won't get into to that. So that's going to be the format there. Then we can remove these items and we can change the name up top as well. So we go to the Customize Reports again. We're going to go to the headers and footers. So we're going to remove the date prepared, the time prepared, and the report bases. We're going to change the title to Comparative. And we could say comparative profit and loss. You could change it to a comparative income statement if you prefer the name of an income statement. It depends on who you're working with if they want to see it as a P&L or an income statement. And then we're going to change down here. We'll say January and February. So January and February. Let's take a look at that. We'll say OK. So we've removed these items. We got the comparative profit and loss for January and February 2020. Let's go ahead and print this out. I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna export it to the current Excel file that we had set up so that we can then make one long PDF file with that. And then I'm going to make a PDF file with it. So we'll go to the Excel drop down. We're gonna create a new worksheet, but it's gonna be going into an existing workbook. So the existing workbook, there's the browser. Let's browse to find where that workbook is. Our workbook is in section 8, February. There's the workbook we want. We're going to go ahead and export. Here it is. So I would go to the left. I'm going to delete this thing that popped up again. I don't need that. We're going to then pull this one to the right. So I'm going to left click on the tab, pull it to the right of the other sheet. Then we'll go to the Layout tab to see the funkiness of that split screen. Then I usually go up to the View tab up top, Windows and Split, removing the split. Then we can rename the tab by double clicking on it, and we can call it just a Comparative P&L report. Then I'll go back to the Normal tab. There it is, and that's it. Let's close this out. Closing this out, saving this. Yes. And then we'll save it as a PDF file as well. So back here, I'm going to go to the print up top. We could just simply say save as PDF. I like to show the PDF printer because I think this is useful oftentimes. It's going to a PDF printer, free printer. You can find that online. We will then print it. And then it's going to ask us where we want to put it. I'm in the correct location. So I'm just going to change the name then. And I'm going to copy the name, which is a comparative profit and loss. I'm going to say for February, and we'll save that one. Okay, so let's check our numbers so far, and then we'll create the transaction list by date. So if you go to the balance sheet, here's what we have so far. You basically want to be looking at the February balances and scroll down through the February balances and compare your numbers. If they look good, great. If not, then you could double click on them and check into what might be a problem. And by using the zoom feature, you can also adjust the date to see if it's a date issue by increasing the date here, making it a later date. And then we're going to do the same thing for the profit and loss. You can check the February numbers are probably the best numbers to check with regards to the profit and loss numbers, of course. Scrolling down here and you can take a look at those. Now, if you have any problems, check the date, use the auto zoom, and then we're going to check the transaction report, which is really where all the detail is. So if your numbers were correct as of the end of January and there's a problem now, then we should be able to see that with the transaction report that we will now be creating. So we're going to go to the reports drop down up top. We're going to go to the accounting and taxes, and we want to take a look at the transaction detail by date. Transaction detail by date, and say OK. Changing the dates up top from 02/01/20 to 12/31. Let's make it to 02/29/20. So this will give us the detail for the month of February. And so this is the same report we ran before. This is a great report to use. It's a great report to check your work in something like this, a problem. It's also a great report to check your work in practice because you can see all the detail within it by date as opposed to going into the general ledger account. It also helps you to count how many transactions you have recorded in case you're kind of use that to help you out with a billing process. So you'll recall we have the type here. We've got the date, we've got the number, we've got the name, customers, vendors, employees. We've got the memo if we left one. We've got the account and the split account, which will give us the 2 accounts involved. If there's more than 2 accounts, we'll see the split here showing that there's more than 2 accounts, and then the amount. If you need to adjust any of the columns, you can do so up top. So you want to basically tick and tie these things out. Just go line by line, tick and tie these amounts. If they're not in the right order, not the worst thing. It should be still okay as long as they're in the same month, the same time period that we are covering. And if there's something on this report that is not on your report, try checking the date range, increasing the dates up top to have a wider range and see if it includes it. You're going to want to, it'll only work to go out in the future, because if you go into the past, you're already going to have data from January. So if it's a future date, you can extend the date range to see if it's there and see if any numbers have changed. You can also, if there's something on your report that's not on this report, then you can use the auto zoom to go into it and consider that as well. So these are going to be our numbers here. We're going to export this to Excel in the same fashion. To do that, we're going to go up to Excel up top. We're going to create a new worksheet, but then it will be going to an existing workbook. You want to choose the existing workbook. Then we have the browse feature. I always double check it, so I'll click on it. And we want to be in February. So I'm going to say Get Great Guitars. We want the February. So I'll double click that and then export. So then here I would typically take this and pull it to the right. So I'm going to left click on the sheet and pull it to the right. Then I'm going to go on this one all the way to the left and right click on it and delete it. And so we're going to say delete that. Then we're going to go back to sheet 1. So this is the new report we have pulled to the right. I'm going to go to the layout tab, page layout, say OK. That'll review the splits. And so we're going to go to the view tab up top, Windows group, and then undo the splits. The splits are now gone. You can see it doesn't all fit on a page. However, if we go back to the first report, we can then try to delete some of these items. So I could delete, say, all these excess. I don't need really the date here item. I can take that. I'm holding down Control, and I'm just selecting each column that is not useful to us, right? I'm going to select each column that isn't useful, and then let go of Control, right-click on one of the selected items, and then delete them. So there we have that, and then it's still not in one column. Now we could change the layout, we could change the font size, we could kind of basically force Excel to shrink it, or so I usually would go to the page layout for a report like this, change the orientation in the page setup group to landscape, and that basically gets it done for us. Let's preview what we have so far. I'm going to go ahead and save this, and so then I'm going to go to the File tab and preview what we have. So File tab, we'll go to the Print section, and that'll give us a preview on the right. So here's what we have so far. Looks okay on that sheet. Now I'd like to see all the sheets. I'm going to go to the Settings drop-down. I'm going to say Print the entire workbook. And there's the comparative balance sheet. There's the profit and loss, and there's the transaction list. That looks good. Now it's all in one place. I can then print this using the Qt PDF printer and put everything in one PDF file that we can then attach to an email if we so choose. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to say print, and then we will print this whole thing out as one Excel sheet, and then it'll be just financial statements for February. I'm going to say OK. And then if we were to open that, it would look like this. So we'd have everything in one file. So you note how that's nice and easy to see. We can give it all in one PDF file, one attachment. And notice down here, it'll actually orientate it for us. And it's not too small. The text is not too small. If we close this back out, the other way we can do this if we don't want to go through that Excel process is to, of course, print this as a PDF file. We can save it as a PDF. I'm going to use the Qt PDF printer again. We're going to say print, and then it's going to give us a location to print at. I'm going to change the name here. So we're going to change the name to a transaction list by date report for February, and we will save that. So now we have our 3 reports. If we were to provide these 3 reports to somebody, we can attach them individually to an email, or we can make another basically worksheet and put them into another file. That file, let's call it financial statements. Financial statements for February. We can take those 3 files and put them into that file, selecting them, putting them into that file, and then we can zip that file. Actually, I called it, I'm going to rename it. It's not a fib, it's feb. Let's say, there we go. And then we can basically zip that file, right click. I'm going to send it to a zipped file, send it to a compressed file, and now we can attach the file. So if we have 3 files, not too bad. If you got 5 or more, you probably want to zip the file or look for some other way to present the data, or else you're going to be overwhelming the recipient of the file.